Hey guys, it's Beth, and today I have a project share and tutorial for you on a card holder that I said I wanted to make for my current killer pad project using the DCWV Songbird pad. I had made these note cards from the pad a while back and was just looking for a pretty way to package them. I had tried a version in the past, didn't like it, so kind of had in mind what I wanted to make, and I took to YouTube to see if I could find anybody else who had already done it. I know several of you have recommended some videos to me for note card set holders, so thank you for those tips and those leads. I watched several, and I made one, but then ended up tweaking it and did several variations to come up with the one that we're going to make today. So the one that I ended up making was an old video from Amber at Lyric Lover 810. I had to go back several years, but I did remember seeing her make one. But this is the one that she had made. It's from one sheet of paper, like the holder itself is just from one sheet of paper, an 8.5 by 11 sheet, and you just cut it down, score it, and you can fold it up and it makes the pockets. This is like exactly what I was looking for. However, the only thing I didn't like about this was that the ends were open here and you could see the foam tape. Like you could see my foam tape. It just looked kind of unfinished. So while this is the exact size and style that I wanted, I knew I wanted something that was enclosed on the ends. So I took her version, tweaked it a little bit, and came up with this version, which is the same size, but I just used a 6 by 11 piece of paper and then added separate pockets from a separate pieces of paper to give me that closed look there on the ends. So that was better, but it still wasn't exactly what I wanted. I wanted it to be enclosed, but like Amber's, where it was all one sheet of paper. So I next came up with, here's my very bright pink template for what we're going to make today. So this is one sheet of paper that you can fold up and fold in, and it gives you your enclosed pockets. Exactly what I wanted. So thank you, Amber, for giving me the starting point, and then I finally figured out how to get what I was looking for. So in order to make this holder, you need either a piece of cardstock or your pattern paper. It depends on how thick your pattern paper or your paper is. If it's more of the thinner copyweight paper, I suggest starting with cardstock, and then you can just add the paper to decorate it later on. Mine is thick enough that it actually holds well on its own, you know, in these. So I'm just going to do the pattern paper. You need a trimmer tool to cut your paper down, some type of scoring tool. I don't have a fancy scoreboard, and I don't even have the score blade for my new trimmer, so I'm using my old Fiskars trimmer with the scoring blade. And then you'll need adhesive, some scissors. Bone folder is helpful, not necessary. And then if you want to do a ribbon enclosure, you would need some ribbon, and then anything that you want to embellish your folder with. So the first thing that we need to do is we are going to start with an 8.5 by 12 inch piece of paper. So we only need to make one cut. So you need to take this 12-inch piece of paper, 12 by 12, and cut it down to 8.5 by 12. So there's that. So you have an extra sheet of scrap to use later. And then now it's time to score. So I'm going to turn mine so that it's, you know, the bottom side is going to be facing up. And I am going to start with these two outer ends. And in order to get the parts that you're going to fold in for the pocket, we need to score at 1/2 inch, or at 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch on both sides. So I turned it around and I'm doing 1/4 and 1/2. And then if you have directional paper, you need to make sure that your pattern is facing that way when you turn it over, because now we're going to go and do the scoring for the bottom pockets. And that is at 6 inches. You're going to score at 6 inches from the top, and then 6 1/4. And then the last scoring we need to do is our spine in the middle. And so again, you know, this is the top facing that direction, and that is done at 5 3/4, and then at 6 1/4. So that will give us like a 1/2 inch spine to close on our folder. So before we do any folding, we're going to do a little bit of trimming, because we don't need this part up here on the end. We only need the scoring down here at the bottom for when we fold our pockets up. So I am going to come to this bottommost score line going the long way across the paper, and I'm going to trim with my scissors until I get to that second vertical score line that goes perpendicular to it. Same way on this side. So I don't know if you can see I don't know how well the score lines are coming through. If I turn it over, if that's any better. So now that I've got that little piece trimmed in, I am going to come to my trimmer, line up my score lines, and you can use scissors for this as well. I just don't always cut very straight. And I'm going to use my trimmer to go down to where I made that little cut. And then I can just pull that extra little piece out right there. And so now we have just this part down here that we need to score. So I'm going to do the same thing. Go up from the bottom this time. Oops, I didn't go far enough. All right, so I'm going to use my scissors to trim out the rest of that. I can handle going that far. There. And then we are going to come, you see how there are 2 score lines that come down the middle here, and my lighting is not showing that very well. So we want, when we fold up our ends, we want to make sure that this middle part doesn't get in the way of us closing it. So I am going to come to this leftmost score line, and down at the very bottom, I'm going to go just to the left of it and cut up to the very top score line that runs across the paper the other way. And then I'm going to go to the one on the right. I'm going to do the same thing, and see again, I didn't cut very straight with that one. And so then we have like this little flap that we just need to cut off. And now we should be able to fold our flaps up later, and then they won't interfere with us closing at all. So the last piece of trimming is we're going to miter our corners here where our scored lines are on the side, and you want to go from the very outside edge to across both score lines. And this just makes it cleaner and easier when we're folding it all up. Okay. Now that our trimming is done, we can start folding. And this is when the bone folder comes in handy, but be careful, because like you can see here where it's sometimes wants to tear on you a little bit. So you just have to be gentle with your creases. But you want to make sure that all of your score lines are crisp. And if you used cardstock to make your folder base, this is the point where I would suggest decorating the outside of it with your pattern paper. But once you've got all your score lines to mark your, the front cover and the back cover and the pockets, but before you actually put it together and have the bulkiness of the pockets in there, it would be easier to decorate the front, back, and the pockets at this point. But since mine is out of pattern paper already, I don't need to do that part, and I'm just going to add some embellishments later, and I can do that. I'd actually rather wait until mine has a little bit more of that structure. So now you need your adhesive, and I am using 1/8 inch score tape, and I'm going to come to this very outermost 1/4 inch scored section. Just put my score tape down. And wet glue can work well as long as you have a strong wet glue. It can work well in the situation. A lot of people prefer it over score tape, just because once the wet glue dries, there is no leftover stickiness that your cards could potentially stick to in the pockets. But because I'm using 1/8 inch tape, it doesn't come anywhere close to the outer edges of my little folded section here, so I'm not really worried about that with this. So now the hardest part of this whole project is you want to fold in that bottom 1/4 inch where your tape is, and then line up the outside edge of your pocket with the outside edge of the cover. Like I said, this is the hardest part, just getting it all lined up evenly. And I'm going to slide my bone folder in there and press it down so that I don't have to squish it from this outer part. And then now you can see my pocket is adhered. And I'm not worried about gluing down the inside, like the inner part of the pocket. I don't think that that is going to hurt anything, that it's going to be open. Here again, line up. I'm going to make sure I get my bottom part of the pocket where it needs to be as well. Okay. So now we have 1/4 inch pocket edges here on the sides and 1/4 inch pockets edges here on the bottom, and then our spine is 1/2 inch. So that's a good amount of room to fit your cards in. And I'm going to go ahead and stick my cards in here for this next part. It'll make it a little easier for me. But I have 5 cards and 5 envelopes. So I'm going to put 3 cards, 3 envelopes here on one side, and then 2 cards and envelopes here on the other. Let's see, that folds up nicely. I am going to do a ribbon closure on this. It's probably not structurally necessary. These both lay flat, like pretty well without, like this one has ribbon that's not tied right now, but this one doesn't, and it still lays pretty well, but it's more for decorative aesthetic purposes as well. But I wanted to do my ribbon after I had my folder cover built so that I could get a better feel for where the ribbon was going to fit. Okay, so that is going to be good enough. But what I really want to do is figure out where my spine hits on my ribbon And I'm going to use my fingernails and kind of give it a little crease on both sides so that I know where I can put some tape and where my stopping point is. And I'm going to use my 1/2 inch score tape here. And I'm not worried about my tape going all the way across the cover. I just want to get a good enough amount on there to help hold my ribbon. And I'm actually going to use 2 strips. To burnish that down. And get it resituated. So I want to make sure that, again, as my head gets in the way here, that I am centered, fairly center on my cover. So then I'm going to come to the back part here and I'm going to do the exact same thing. Oopsie. Did not get a good hold of that. Don't want to pull the tape off, just want to pull the cover, the top part. There we go. So again, this part is not going to be covered, so I want to make sure that it is fairly straight and centered. Okay, so my ribbon is now on. And to decorate this one, like on these, I used this cut apart that said beautiful on both of them, but for some reason I only had 2 of those left. So in this case, I'm going to use the cut apart that has wonderful. And I've already cut some layering pieces for this one. And I'm going to go ahead and put adhesive on the backs of all of them. And you can see I'm actually using the back of one that I tried to stamp on, and it messed up. It didn't stamp very well the first time, and when I went to re-stamp it, I wasn't using my MISTI and I didn't quite get it in the right spot. So I am using that for the back side, just so it doesn't go to waste. And I am just using score tape on these pieces since they're going on the cover. You could, ATG would probably be fine. I just want to make sure that if it gets manhandled, open and closed and all that, that these pieces will stay on. And again, you could certainly use wet glue. I just never have the patience to wait for the wet glue to dry. But it is definitely the more cost-effective option. Okay, so I'm going to burnish all of these down. And then I can start building my layers. I always like to work from the top down before I put it on my actual project. Some people like to start from the bottom, putting it on their project, and then building up. It's whatever you are more comfortable with. Okay, so that will then go right there in the center. But before I put that down, I had some fussy cut flower parts left from something else I'd done with this pad, and I wanted to see if I could somehow incorporate these guys on here. Kind of tucking them in, making them look like they were tucked behind, because some of them are just partial. They were at the edge of the paper anyway. What if we did him right there? Gives a little bit of something extra, I think. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and put these flowers down next, and then we'll put the wonderful card down. And for the flowers, I'm just going to use my ATG. So I've heard from several of you that you guys are working your way through your stash. You've killed off some 6x6 pads, working on 12x12 pads. I love to hear that. I'm so glad that others are in the same boat as me, as hoarding paper all these years, and that now we're all working on trying to use it up together. Okay. So now that I've got those down, I will come and tear off my tape backing. Okay, there we go. And that is the little folder. Simple, a lot more simpler than I made it out to be when I first started doing this project. So if you have a ribbon, you can tie it closed with a pretty little bow. Go. And you can trim that down if you need to. And the one thing that I still want to do for this is, I don't know how well you can see it on these, but I added some glossy accents to any place that there was a button, just to give it kind of a raised 3D effect rather than putting actual buttons on there and adding like extra weight. So I did that on both of these. So I will do that real quick. Make sure I need to clean that out. Ooh, there you go. Now she's coming out. That's why I always do it on a little scrap paper. So I just wanted to give the button pieces a little bit extra dimension on this card. Now I don't know about you guys, but this one, this flower right here, reminds me of a fried egg because it's white, kind of not a perfect circle, and it's got that yellow center. Every time I see this particular card when I'm working with it, I always think it's a fried egg. But anyway. So there are 3 versions of a note card folder that you can use. And again, this would make great Mother's Day gifts if you wanted to package them up prettily, end of the year teacher appreciation gifts, just gifts for a friend, whatever. But I will put the dimensions down in the description box below of the one that I made, like what the piece of size paper you need, and then all of the scoring dimensions as well. I will put that in the description box below. For those of you who are new to my channel, hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Please be sure to subscribe so that you can stay tuned for more ideas like this on how to use up your stash. Join us as we all are trying to finally use what we have. And then be sure to like. That helps my channel grow so that I can continue to do more projects for you guys. And if you know somebody else who would enjoy this project, please feel free to share this video with them. But I thank you guys for your time today, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.